Imagine you're running a business, right? And you're basically treating it like driving this high-performance sports car.
Oh, yeah. Always pushing the limit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Everyone in your company is just obsessing over the top speed. You're pushing the pedal to the metal, trying to go faster, sell more, drive that top-line revenue up. And, I mean, that's sales.
Right, that's the traditional growth mindset.
Yeah. But what if, while you're slamming the gas pedal, your fuel line has a massive leak and, I don't know, you're dragging a parachute behind you?
But you're burning massive amounts of energy, but you aren't actually getting anywhere.
Exactly.
In a business context, you're bleeding profit the faster you try to scale.
Yeah.
It's a nightmare.
It really is. And that is the exact problem we're solving today. We're looking at the foundational data behind the APC supply chain frameworks, specifically diving into their strategies on procurement.
Which is honestly a heavily overlooked area.
Totally. So our mission today for this deep dive is to decode a part of the business engine that rarely gets the spotlight. We're going to look at the hidden world of suppliers.
I love this topic.
The goal here is to show you that procurement is not just, some administrative task where people sit in a back office filling out purchase orders all day.
Right, it's not just paperwork.
No, it's a strategic powerhouse. It is a hidden profit engine for literally any organization.
It really is. I mean, people tend to treat buying things as a purely tactical necessity. You need materials, so you buy materials. Simple as that.
Yeah, you just swipe the corporate card and move on.
Exactly. But when you look at the actual frameworks used by supply chain professionals, you start to realize that smart sourcing is, well, it's one of the most powerful levers an organization can pull to instantly increase its margins.
Okay, let's unpack this because I want to get straight to the aha moment regarding how much money is actually saved by smart buying.
The math on it is incredible.
But before we get into that math, we really have to acknowledge the very first hurdle here. I mean, before a company can manage a supplier, it has to decide if it even needs one in the first place.
Right, the classic in-source versus outsource dilemma. We are starting at the absolute beginning. To make or to buy.
And it's never a simple yes or no, is it?
Oh, never. You're constantly weighing these severe trade-offs. The APCS framework outlines 5 major dimensions you basically have to balance. The first one is quality.
Okay, so how does quality play into it?
Well, if you build a component internally, you retain total control over your intellectual property and your processes.
Which sounds great.
It is, but you have to build that expertise from scratch. Now, if you outsource, you're tapping into a specialist who literally does nothing but make that component.
Right.
But the trade-off is you fundamentally lose direct oversight of the daily manufacturing process.
It's the ultimate control versus scale problem.
Yes, exactly.
Like if I'm running a bakery, I can mill my own flour to ensure it's absolutely perfect, but that limits how many cakes I can realistically bake in a day.
Spot on.
But if I buy the flour from a massive mill, the quality might be more standardized, but I can scale my actual cake production overnight.
Yep. And that control versus scale tension applies to the next dimension as well, which is speed and scheduling.
How so?
Well, outsourcing can drastically reduce your initial lead times because the supplier already has the machinery. They have the dedicated capacity up and running.
They're ready to go on day one.
Right. But it makes your internal scheduling highly complex. You're no longer just, walking down the hall to check on the production line.
Right. You can't just poke your head in and ask how it's going.
Exactly. You're coordinating logistics with an external entity, spanning different time zones, dealing with their competing priorities.
Which introduces the whole issue of dependability.
Precisely. Your dependability now relies entirely on their dependability.
That's a huge risk.
It is. And you also have to weigh flexibility. An external supplier likely serves multiple clients, meaning they just have a much larger total capacity.
So they can handle spikes in demand better.
Yes. If your product suddenly goes viral and you need triple the volume, an external supplier might be able to flex up to meet that demand. Whereas your internal factory...
It would probably take months to expand, buy new machines, hire people.
Exactly. And then there's the final dimension, which, let's be honest, usually dictates the entire conversation.
Cost.
Cost is the ultimate scale tipper. Outsourcing means a significantly lower capital investment up front. You aren't buying millions of dollars in machinery or taking on the payroll of a whole new labor force.
But there's a catch, right?
Always. If you already have a factory and your current machines are sitting half empty, outsourcing a new part might leave you with excess internal capacity.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, you're basically paying overhead on an empty building while paying a supplier to do the work your building could be doing.
Okay, so let's assume we've navigated all those trade-offs. We look at our capacity, our
Yeah.
capital, and we decide to buy. We are officially outsourcing a component.
The decision is made.
This brings us to the actual math of procurement. And this is where the ABCS data flips traditional business logic completely upside down.
This is that profit engine concept you mentioned earlier. The module poses a highly practical scenario. It asks, which generates more net profit, a 10% increase in sales or a 10% reduction in the cost of your direct materials?
See, my gut instinct is always going to be sales. More revenue coming through the door just feels like it should mean a healthier business.
Most people think that way. But let's walk through the scenario they mapped out. Let's keep the numbers super clean.
Okay, lay it on me.
You have a business selling a product for $10 a unit, and you currently sell 1,000 units a month. So your total revenue is $10,000.
Nice and easy. 10 grand.
Now, let's look at what it costs to make those products. Your direct materials cost $5 a unit. Your direct labor costs $1 a unit.
Okay.
And you have a flat fixed overhead of $3,000 for your factory rent, admin, things like that.
All right, doing the math really quickly. 1,000 units at $5 for materials is 5 grand, plus 1,000 for the labor, plus the 3 grand overhead. Your total costs are $9,000.
Exactly. Leaving you with a gross profit of $1,000, you're operating on a 10% profit margin.
Very standard.
Right. But now the CEO comes in and demands growth. Option A is the traditional route. Pump the sales gas pedal. You launch a huge marketing campaign. You hustle, and you manage to increase sales by 10%.
Okay, so we're selling 1,100 units now. Our revenue hits $11,000.
But the catch is that selling more units means you actually have to build more units. Your costs don't stay at $9,000.
Right, because you need more materials and labor. That is the flaw in the whole sales cures everything mentality.
Exactly. Your variable costs scale directly with your sales. You have to buy 100 more units of materials and pay for 100 more units of labor.
So when you crunch those new numbers, your gross profit moves from $1,000 to $1,400.
Yep. You improved your margin to roughly 13%. It's a solid win.
Well, let's look at option B. Let's say sales stay completely flat. We do not spend a dime on marketing. We still only sell 1,000 units. But our procurement team sits down with our suppliers and negotiates a 10% reduction in the cost of our direct materials. We drop the materials cost from $5 down to $4.50.
We are saving just 50 cents a unit.
What's fascinating here is the sheer leverage of that 50-cent savings. Because your sales volume didn't change at all, your labor and overhead costs remained perfectly static.
You didn't incur any new costs to achieve that saving.
Right. Therefore, that entire 50 cents drops uninterrupted straight to your bottom line.
By saving just 10% on direct materials, your gross profit leads to $1,500.
Your margin instantly becomes 15%.
That is the mechanism that completely changes how you view a business. A 10% cost reduction beat a 10% sales increase by $100 in pure profit.
It's the difference between trying to shout louder to sell more lemonade versus just quietly negotiating a cheaper price on lemons.
That's a perfect way to put it.
Squeezing your material costs is incredibly lucrative.
And it highlights why procurement is a strategic function, not a clerical one. Every single dollar saved in procurement is a full dollar of profit.
Wow.
Yeah. Every dollar of new sales only yields a tiny fraction of a dollar in profit because of the variable costs tied to making that new product.
Okay, so we've proven that getting a better price on our lemons is the fastest path to profit.
Undeniably.
But how do we actually execute that without destroying our relationship with the lemon farmer? I mean, we can't just walk in and demand a cheaper price.
No, definitely not. That requires moving from random purchasing into a formal procurement process. The framework breaks this down into a continuous living cycle.
Okay, what does that cycle look like?
It begins with planning. And this isn't just deciding you need something. It's establishing rigorous specifications. You perform a value analysis.
Like asking if you really need a premium brand name component or if a functional equivalent will achieve the exact same quality for way less money.
Exactly. You select suppliers and negotiate the initial parameters during this phase.
And planning feeds directly into execution, right? Which is the actual day-to-day purchasing cycle.
Yes. Placing the orders, tracking lead times, receiving the goods, and managing the ongoing contract. But a massive failure point for a lot of companies is just stopping there.
They just assume the job is done once the contract is signed.
Right. The crucial third phase is monitoring and controlling. You must have systems tracking supplier performance delivery times, defect rates, responsiveness.
Because that monitoring creates a cybernetic feedback loop.
Precisely.
If the receiving docks keep catching defects, that data feeds right back into the planning phase for the next cycle, triggering a renegotiation or maybe a search for a totally new supplier.
Exactly. And the nature of that feedback loop depends entirely on the type of relationship you've decided to build with that supplier.
Right, they aren't all the same.
No. The APCS module presents a supplier relationship management, or SRM, as a wide spectrum based on compatibility, mutual need, openness, and trust.
Let's ground that spectrum a bit. On the lowest end of the value-added scale, the text defines arm's-length relationships. These are your conventional vendors.
The standard day-to-day purchases.
Yeah, I like to think of this as buying a coffee at a drive-through window. It is strictly transactional. I hand you money, you hand me the product. We really don't need to know anything about each other's long-term goals.
That's a perfect analogy for an arm's-length dynamic. But as you move across the spectrum toward higher value-added interactions, you enter collaborative relationships.
And what do those look like?
This is where you develop partnerships and strategic alliances.
Okay, so if arm's length is a drive-through, a strategic alliance is like a marriage where you combine bank accounts.
It truly is. In a strategic alliance, there is deep mutual need and profound trust. You aren't just sending them purchase orders. You might be integrating your software systems so they can see your real-time inventory.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you might have your engineers co-designing products with their engineers. You're fundamentally investing in each other's financial success.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, but also a bit scary. The text talks about single sourcing as a strategy. Isn't that just putting all your eggs in one basket? What if the basket drops?
It is a severe risk, and the debate around single sourcing is central to modern procurement.
I can imagine.
The pro side of the argument is built on massive financial leverage. If you consolidate all your buying power into one supplier, you secure exceptional volume pricing. Furthermore, you become a VIP client.
Meaning, if there is sudden global shortage of parts and my supplier only has enough inventory to serve one client, they pick up the phone when I call because I'm their biggest revenue stream.
Precisely. And there is an alignment of incentives. If a supplier knows they have a guaranteed, exclusive, long-term contract with you, they're financially incentivized to invest heavily in their own infrastructure.
They feel safe making those big capital investments.
Exactly. They will buy better machines to improve yields and reduce rework because they know they will see the return on that investment. Paradoxically, delivery reliability can actually increase because they're terrified of losing that exclusive mega contract.
Okay, I see the mechanical advantage of that leverage. But play out the cons for me. What is the actual fallout when things go wrong?
The vulnerabilities are massive. The first is inflexibility. If your product goes viral and demand spikes 300%, your single supplier simply might not have the physical factory space to scale up that quickly.
So they become an artificial cap on your growth.
Right. The second major risk is complacency.
Because if they know I'm not shopping around, what stops them from slowly raising their prices?
Nothing. You lose touch with competitive market pricing. Without a rival supplier keeping them honest, their inefficiencies might slowly get baked into your costs.
That's terrifying.
And finally, the ultimate risk is catastrophic disruption. If your single supplier faces a union strike, goes bankrupt, or their facility burns to the ground,
Your production line instantly flatlines.
everything just stops.
Which brings us to a massive structural problem. We know that building a deep, single-sourced alliance is highly lucrative, but carries fatal risks.
Right.
We also know that treating everyone like an arm's-length drive-through vendor is safe, but leaves millions of dollars in potential savings on the table. How does a company triage its spending to balance that?
This raises an important question, and it is exactly why the APCS framework utilizes the risk versus profit matrix.
Oh, the matrix.
Yes, it's a strategic tool to categorize every single item you purchase so you know exactly which relationship model to apply. The matrix plots supply risk from low to high against profit impact from low to high.
Which creates 4 distinct quadrants.
Exactly.
Okay, let's navigate this matrix. If I have an item with low supply risk and a low impact on my profit margin, what is my strategy?
Those are non-critical items. Think of basic office supplies or janitorial equipment. There are thousands of capable suppliers, the items are cheap, and if a shipment is late, it's an annoyance, but it doesn't shut down your factory. Suppliers have zero bargaining power here. The strategy is simple spot purchasing. Don't waste corporate resources negotiating elaborate contracts. Just use an arm's length vendor and buy what you need locally.
That makes perfect sense. Now, what if the supply risk is still low, meaning there are plenty of vendors, but the item has a massive impact on my profit?
Those are leverage items. This is the holy grail for a procurement team. Because there is ample market competition, you face very little risk of a shortage.
Okay.
But because you spend a massive total volume on this category, or it is a core component of your product, applying a tiny percentage of cost savings across that huge volume generates a massive leap in your overall profitability.
So if I'm a global shipping company, corrugated cardboard boxes are a leverage item. Hundreds of factories make cardboard, so the risk is low, but I buy millions of them.
Exactly.
If I squeeze out a 2-cent discount per box, I generate millions in net profit.
You use your purchasing power to command the best possible price. Now let's cross over to the high-risk side of the matrix. What happens when you have an item with a low impact on your profit, but a critically high supply risk?
I would guess that is the most frustrating quadrant to be in.
It is. These are bottleneck items. The item itself might only cost $2, so a discount won't really change your overall profit margin.
Right.
But there might only be 1 or 2 highly specialized factories in the entire world that make it. Or maybe it's protected by a strict patent. The supplier has immense bargaining power, because if you don't secure that $2 part, your $100,000 machine cannot be built.
So for a bottleneck item, the strategy completely flips.
Yeah.
I'm not fighting to squeeze a 10-cent discount out of them. I'm fighting to ensure guaranteed availability so my assembly line doesn't stall.
Precisely. You focus entirely on securing reliable supply, not driving down the price. And finally, you have the top right quadrant, high supply risk combined with high profit impact.
Strategic item.
Right. Yes. These are the highly proprietary, complex components that define the value of your final product. There might only be one supplier capable of producing it, and the cost makes up a huge percentage of your final price tag.
If we connect this back to our earlier concepts, this strategic quadrant is exactly where you utilize that deep single sourcing strategic alliance. You have to combine bank accounts with the supplier because your mutual survival is linked.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, misdiagnosing these quadrants is how billion-dollar supply chains collapse. The framework explicitly separates tactical buying from strategic sourcing.
Okay, break that down for us.
Tactical business is for non-critical materials with standard quality and stable prices. You just need the item efficiently. Strategic sourcing is for volatile environments requiring tight quality control and shared technology.
So tactical buying is like buying paper clips for the office stable price, standard quality, who cares who makes it. But strategic sourcing is like buying the highly specialized microchip that makes our flagship product work. We need a partnership for the chip, but just an arm's length vendor for the paper clips.
Exactly. If you treat a highly complex strategic item like a routine tactical buy, just shopping it out to the lowest bidder on an arm's length basis, you will experience catastrophic quality failures and massive delays.
Okay, so we've mapped our parts. We know a strategic item requires a deep partnership. But how do we actually select a supplier capable of handling that responsibility? I mean, you can't just take their marketing brochure at face value.
You absolutely cannot. The module outlines the necessity of supplier capability assessments.
Which sounds intense.
It is. Before you ever sign a contract, you are rigorously auditing their engineering designs, their financial stability, their manufacturing tolerances to ensure they can meet your critical to quality metrics. And based on these audits, you stratify your suppliers into tiers.
Walk me through the tier system.
A new supplier might start simply as an approved supplier. They pass the basic checks. If they consistently perform well, they might be elevated to a preferred supplier.
What does that mean practically?
It means your internal buyers are formally mandated to give them the first right of refusal on new orders. But the ultimate goal is achieving certified supplier status.
What is the mechanical benefit of being certified? Is it just a better discount?
Oh, it is far more valuable than a discount. It fundamentally lowers your cost of quality.
How so?
A certified supplier has proven over years of data that their internal quality controls are so incredibly flawless that you, the buyer, completely trust them.
Trust them to do what?
You trust them so much that you eliminate incoming inspections entirely.
Wait, really?
Yes. When their truck arrives at your dock, you don't spend labor hours unloading the boxes, testing a sample batch, and repackaging them. The parts go directly from the truck straight onto your assembly line.
That is massive. You are eliminating an entire friction point of labor, delay, and testing costs.
Ex-
So we have a certified supplier for a strategic item. How do we structure the actual contract? Because an arm's length purchase order isn't going to cover the complexities of a shared alliance.
Right. The sources highlight several advanced contract mechanisms designed to align behavior. For example, you might utilize a buyback contract.
Why would a supplier ever agree to buy back unsold inventory? That sounds like a terrible deal for them.
Because it shares the risk of demand uncertainty. If the supplier shares the risk of unsold goods, you, the buyer, are mathematically incentivized to order a much larger initial batch.
Oh, okay.
And that larger batch gives the supplier better production efficiencies and guarantees them a massive initial run. Or you might use revenue sharing or cost sharing agreements.
Where the financial incentives of both companies are contractually tied to the success of the final product.
Exactly. It forces alignment.
I noticed the text also mentioned a capacity reservation contract. That sounds like I'm paying a premium just to guarantee that the supplier will leave a portion of their factory floor empty for me. Am I paying them to potentially do nothing?
Yes, and in highly volatile markets, it is the smartest money you will ever spend. You're essentially buying insurance.
Like having a backup generator.
Right. If your demand spikes, you instantly have factory space ready to go, allowing you to capture huge market share while your competitors are stuck waiting on back orders.
But at the end of the day, all these advanced contracts still require someone to sit at a table and negotiate the core pricing. And the APCS framework provides a very stark mathematical tool to ground that negotiation, which is the break-even formula.
Yes. In any negotiation, especially when you're looking at massive fixed costs for custom tooling or setup fees, you need to know your absolute floor.
Right.
The break-even point formula is simple but vital. The number of units you need to sell to break even equals your total fixed costs divided by your price per unit minus your variable cost per unit.
So what does this all mean for you? Let's say you're sitting in the boardroom across from a supplier. They offer you a fantastic low price per unit, but they demand a massive upfront fixed cost to retool their machines.
A classic scenario.
The break-even formula removes the emotion, the salesmanship, and the pressure from the room. It gives you a hard, undeniable number. It tells you exactly how many units you have to push into the market just to recoup that setup fee and stop losing money.
Exactly.
If the math dictates you must sell 50,000 units to break even, but your market data says your absolute ceiling is 20,000 units, the negotiation is over. You have to walk away no matter how good the unit price looks.
It acts as an objective reality check against overly optimistic procurement strategies. It saves companies from making huge mistakes.
We have covered incredible ground today. We started by proving that smart procurement finding the 10% material reduction often acts as a more powerful profit engine than simply pushing for more sales.
We certainly did.
We navigated the trade-offs of making versus buying. We explored the relationship spectrum from drive-through vendors to integrated marriages. We mapped out how to triage our purchasing using the risk versus profit matrix, separating tactical buys from strategic sourcing.
It's a lot to take in.
And we learned how to lock in capable, certified suppliers using contracts designed to manipulate risk and guarantee capacity.
It really is a comprehensive framework that forces you to look at every dollar leaving your company through a highly strategic lens. But I want to leave everyone with one final thought regarding that risk versus profit matrix.
I love a good lingering question. Let's hear it.
Think about the matrix we discussed. In a highly stable world, things stay in their quadrants. But what happens when a sudden global shock, a natural disaster, a sudden shortage, instantly shifts an item from a sleepy, low-risk leverage category into a high-risk bottleneck crisis? Does your current supplier relationship have the flexibility to survive that shift? Next time you buy something for your business, ask yourself, which quadrant is this in today and where might it be tomorrow?
That is a phenomenal stress test for any supply chain. It's not just about building an engine that runs fast on a smooth track. It's about ensuring the engine doesn't rip itself apart when the road suddenly turns to gravel. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the strategic world of procurement. We hope it empowers you to look at your own operational decisions with a highly strategic, mathematical eye. Until next time, keep looking beneath the surface.